When you're first starting out as a content creator, video editing can be both an extremely exciting but also extremely daunting task. That's why for most beginners, I always recommend that they start with a program like CapCut, Filmora, iMovie, something really simple and user-friendly that is a really great way to introduce yourself to video editing. But if you're ready to take that next jump into something a little bit more complicated like Adobe Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve, this video is for you. So in today's video, we're going to be diving into how to organize your files, set up a project in Premiere Pro, and some basic tips for how to start editing in Adobe Premiere Pro. Let's jump right into it. All right, so before we even get into Adobe Premiere Pro, let's start with setting up your folders. So normally I would save all of my project folders into dedicated folders within this external hard drive right here for whatever client or whatever project it happens to be. But for our purposes today, we are just going to work on a folder right on my desktop. Editing 101, cool. Now in here, I'm gonna create a new folder called EPV, another folder we call footage, one for music, and that is all that I'm gonna use for now. I'll also create two folders inside of the footage folder called A-roll and B-roll. Now, for those of you who don't know, A-roll and B-roll are terms in the filmmaking world. So your A-roll is going to be the main footage of the video. So for instance, if it's a talking head video, the talking head portion is going to be the main footage that's going to go in the A-roll folder. B-roll is any additional clips or images that you overlay on top of that main footage. And now, of course, any music that you're going to use is going to go into the music folder. Personally, I recommend, because this is what I do, I recommend keeping a stock folder on whatever your main hard drive is that is full of music that I constantly use, overlays I constantly use, B-roll I constantly use. Anything that you find yourself using consistently, you want to put it into a specific folder dedicated to stock assets. That way you can easily go and access them for every single project you do, rather than having to re-download them or move them around all the time into different project folders. It's just far simpler to keep them all in one place. And now that we're done with this, we can finally go ahead and open up Premiere Pro and start getting to work. So we're going to open up Adobe Premiere Pro, and at first you're going to be greeted with this menu. So obviously mine has a whole bunch of projects in it. Yours is going to be completely empty, especially if this is your first time using the program. So the first thing you're going to do is go up here and click New Project, or if this little window doesn't open up, you can also go up here to File, New Project. Boom. And now we're going to be at the import screen. So there's not much you need to do here. All you want to do is give your project a name and make sure that you select project location and you set it to the correct location wherever you put that project folder. Go ahead and open it up, and you want to save your project file to the EPVs folder. Boom. So then you look over here, it's users, desktop, editing 101, EPV. Perfect. There's nothing else that we want to do here. So we're just going to go down to the bottom right and click create. All right, so the first thing you're going to want to do now that we're in our project is set up your workspace. So we're going to go to Window, Workspaces, and I recommend working in the All Panels workspace. That is where I do 90% of my editing. Essentially, all of the necessary things that you're going to need for some basic, simple editing is all going to be right in there. So I would recommend you just use that. If you want to, you can go ahead and create your own workspace. I don't really like doing that. I used to do it, but now I just kind of find it to be a waste of time. So we're in the All Panels workspace, and you're going to want to go down this list really quick and make sure that you've got audio clip mixer on, audio meters on, audio track mixer on, effect controls on, effects on, essential graphics on, essential sound on, events you can go ahead and turn off. Not super important, but for now I would just leave this all as it is. Now we're going to go over to the project panel. That's this one right here on the bottom right. You're going to click import media or Control I, and it's going to open up your files. All you've got to do is go over to your project folder, wherever that is, and import your footage folder. So click your footage folder, click import folder, and then you can go ahead and import your music as well. Mine, I'm actually going to import directly from my stock folder. And this is where you're also going to import any other assets or footage that you might need to use. Lastly, we're going to create another folder. We're going to title Sequences. Boom. Now we're going to open up the Sequences folder, and you're going to click this little piece of paper icon down here called New Item, or you're going to press Control N, and you're going to go over to Sequence, Boom, and now it's gonna open up this menu. Now, this menu can be a little overwhelming to most people at first, so it's actually really straightforward, so I'm gonna go through it with you really quick. You're gonna be editing a horizontal video, like the one that you're watching right now. You're gonna go over to HD 180p, and then we're gonna click one of these different options. For YouTube videos, I would preferably select 59.94 FPS, that's 60 FPS. That's just frames per second, or 30 FPS, which I would really only recommend if you're doing short films or something like that. But for 90% of the things that you're gonna be working on, you're gonna wanna use 60 FPS. Alternatively, if you wanted to make short form edits, you can go ahead and create a custom vertical aspect ratio. Alternatively, if you wanna do short form videos, you can go ahead and create a custom vertical aspect ratio sequence, which I will go over with you in just a second. So you're gonna go to sequences, new, boom. Now I have down here in custom a vertical one. So this is a simple vertical aspect ratio. If you want to create that yourself, it's very simple. Here's all you got to do. Go to HD 1080p 60 frames a second, go to settings, and then over here in the video tab where it says frame size 1920 by 1080, all you're gonna do is swap these two numbers. So this one's gonna be 1920 and this one's gonna be 1080. And what that does is it takes that aspect ratio and it just rotates it. Alternatively, you can also just go over to social and select social media portrait 16 by 9. 30 FPS. The only problem with that is that obviously the video will be 30 frames a second instead of 60 frames a second, which personally I really like doing social media content at 60 frames per second. That's why I created the custom sequence. But you can also just use this one right here if that whole process is a little too complicated. All right, so now that our sequence is created, there's a couple of things that I want you guys to watch out for. One of them is to make sure that you have snap to timeline selected. This is going to make your editing a lot smoother, and you have insert and overwrite sequences as nest or individual clips on. You don't really need to worry about that. Linked selection, don't worry about that. And then just make sure that these are selected on so that you can actually access them. Next, I'm gonna go over to our footage folder, A-roll. I'm gonna grab our A-roll, and when we double click on it, it's going to open up over here the source monitor. So the source monitor is just where you can monitor and look at the clip before you add it to the timeline. This allows you to select which portion of it you want to upload without having to directly put it in and cut it. It's a very smoother, easier process. So we'll simply look for the portion that we want to use.
Yo, I just finished the first of my 4 meetings today. Super epic, super excited. And now I'm checking out Dylan's live AMA inside the real world. Very epic. Going to grab some coffee and then prepare for my next meeting.
All right, so I want it to end. Right there where I finished saying the word meeting. So in order to do that, you're just gonna go right onto the timeline, right where it's supposed to be, and press O. This is going to create your out point. So what this means is when I drag this over to my timeline, it's only going to select the video between the out point and the in point. And the in point, you just go over to whatever part of the video you want to start it at, and you select I. So now you'll see this little highlight bar across the middle of my timeline. This means that when I drag this over to my timeline, it's only going to pull that portion of it. So we're gonna grab this, I'm gonna drag it onto video 1, boom, and then it appears right here in my program monitor. So the program monitor is where you can view the actual final piece of content as it's going to appear to your audience. So now if we go over to our timeline and we just zoom in a little bit by pressing the plus sign, we'll be able to see it a lot more clearly. Now, when you first click onto your timeline, it's probably gonna look something like this. This is very difficult to work with. So what I recommend you do is hold down Alt and then press plus a couple of times. That's going to make your audio track a little bit wider, and then hold down Control and press plus a couple of times. That's going to make your video track a little bit higher. Now, if we click this little wrench tool, the settings, we're going to select a couple of different things. One of them you're going to want to make sure you turn on is show audio waveform. So when I click this, you're going to see the waveform of my audio show up. That's going to make it so much easier for me to clip up this video later on, as I'll show you, because you'll be able to see the audio more clearly. The other thing you want to make sure you have on, back over to the settings, is show video thumbnails. So I already have this turned on, but if I turn it off really quick, you can see that that little thumbnail disappears off of my timeline. Having that on just makes it a lot easier for me to see what clip is there when I'm looking at my timeline if I'm not directly over it. Like if I'm over here looking at a different clip, I can see, okay, that clip is there, now I can edit based on that. The next couple of things I want to go over with you are the basic tools that you're going to need for cutting up your video. So we're going to press plus a couple of times to zoom in a little bit more on this, and then we're going to go over to the tools bar. So the first tool that we're using, the default tool, is the select tool. This one is pretty much the primary tool that allows you to move your clips around like I've been showing you, and it allows you to adjust various settings and all the different things that you need to do. The next tool that I want you to look at is actually this one down here, the razor tool. So we're gonna click on that, or we're gonna press C. And what this lets me do is cut up my video on my timeline. Obviously, this is for shortening up clips. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna cut up this video in order to just make it a little bit faster and a little bit smoother. So we're gonna be watching through it, looking at this waveform, we can tell where I'm talking and when I'm not. So we're gonna go over to the part where I seem to stop talking. So there's a little pause right here. So if I wanted to cut this out, I would go over to the end of the clip where I talk, cut it, then go over to the beginning of the next clip, cut it, and then switch over to the select tool by either going over here onto the timeline and clicking it, or by pressing V, click that, and then you want to press Shift Delete. So if you just press delete, it's going to delete the portion that you selected, but if you press Shift Delete, it will delete the portion you selected and fill in the gap for you, which saves you a lot of time. Keep walking through it.
Super excited.
Use the razor tool, clip, select that, Shift Delete. Select, cut, Shift Delete. All right, so that's all I'm gonna do for now, just so you get the idea. And then there's one little effect I wanna show you that'll help you smoothen out the audio a little bit. So we're gonna go over to effects, this little search bar, and we're gonna type in constant power. It's gonna be right over here, constant power. So what you wanna do with this is drag it right onto that clip, that transition between your two clips, and then go over to it. And what this does is it mixes the audio of the two clips together to smoothen it out so that there's no choppy sounding editing. So if we listen to it, it's a little bit off, so we're gonna shorten that a little bit. That way it takes up a little bit less space, that way it happens a little bit faster, and nice smooth audio transition. So then we're gonna grab onto this, and we're gonna put that on all of the different clips. Now to do that, you don't need to manually move it on every single time. Instead, you can just copy and paste the transition. So we're gonna select it, and we're gonna press Control C, go over to the beginning of our edit. Make sure that this little icon right here, this shows you the main piece of audio or the main track. So we're gonna make sure that this is on whichever track the audio that you wanna do this is on, whether it's the main audio, whatever it is, and make sure that you have the audio selected. So if we turn this off, it will deselect the track. Basically, it means that I can't edit the track as effectively, so it's not an active track. But if I re-effect it, and then I press Control V, boom, it pastes the effect for me. And then, to quickly move from one clip to another, we're just gonna press the down arrow. Boom, and now it's gonna jump right to the next cut. Down arrow, just gonna jump to the right next cut. Control V, gonna paste that effect again. Press down, jump to the next cut. Control V, press down, cut to the next cut. Control V. Boom, easy. So now you've got nice, smooth audio on all of your transitions. The last thing I wanna go over with you is B-roll. So when we go over our B-roll folder and we select, I don't know, let's say this clip right here. We go over and we select whatever portion we wanna use using those in and out points like I showed you. Let's see, I'm gonna go right to when the laptop opens, to when I start typing, boom, okay, awesome. So now we've got our in and out points. Now, to select this clip without any audio, all you gotta do is click this video only icon, click it and drag it over your clip and place it on the timeline on one of the video tracks above your A-roll. So if I put this on video 1, it's gonna go right over my footage and it's gonna override it. But if I put it above it, it's gonna play over it without it causing any problems for the clips below. Now, an important thing to remember when you're using B-roll is make sure that you put B-roll over portions of it that actually make sense. You don't want to be putting your B-roll over sections of your video that don't need it or that need something else. You want to make sure that everything makes perfect sense. Now let's go over exporting. So the first thing I want to make sure I do is save my project. So we're going to click Control S, going to save your project really quick. Now, we've got our timeline right here. I want you to go to the very beginning of your video, press I to select the in point, and then go to the very end of your video, press O to select the out point. Next, we're gonna click Control M, or we're gonna go up to this top section and click export. Now this takes us to the exporting menu. So this one is where things can get a little bit tricky. Now the first thing you wanna do is make sure that your preset matches the video that you're using. So in this case, we're looking at 1080p HD, which does match the video that we're already using. However, just to play it safe, no matter what kind of project you're working on, I always recommend clicking this button and selecting match source adaptive high bitrate. So what that's going to do is it's going to automatically set the video to whatever format you're editing on. So if you were editing a vertical video, it's going to make sure that it exports it as a vertical video. If you're editing a 4:3 video, it's going to make sure it exports as a 4:3 video. No matter what the setting is, no matter what the resolution is, it's always going to match it perfectly if you use this setting. And you're going to want to make sure that this stays on H.26.4. If you are editing on a Windows PC like I am, if you're using a Mac, you're going to want to look for something called QuickTime format. That is if you're using a Mac, but again, if you're using a Windows, you want to use H.264. Next, go to file name, make sure that you name your video whatever you want it to be. In this case, we'll just leave it as it is. And then select location and find your project folder that we already created in the beginning of the video. And you don't really need a separate folder to put this in. You can just put it right into the project folder as is. However, if you're doing a project that has multiple exports, like maybe you're doing a batch of short form videos, then I recommend you have a separate folder to put your exports in. I'm gonna click save. Boom, and now we have two options down here on the bottom. One of them is export, the other one is send to media encoder. So if we click export, it'll directly export the video in Premiere Pro, which is fine. However, that means that we can't use the program while it's exporting, and exporting can take a very long time. So we have media encoder. So if we click export into media encoder, it's going to open up Adobe Media Encoder. Now, if you have Premiere Pro installed, it will automatically have already installed media encoder. So you don't need to install any extra software. And once Media Encoder is opened, it's going to put our project in this little queue down here. Perfect. Now, double check that your settings are all correct. Adaptive, high bitrate, desktop folder, look, it's in the right folder, all that good stuff, epic. Now, we just go over to the top corner and we press the little play button. And what that's gonna do is it's going to start exporting our video. Now, the brilliant thing about Media Encoder is that while this is exporting, I can still go into Premiere Pro and work on something else, whether it's editing a different project or even completely closing out Premiere Pro, closing out my project, it will continue to edit my video without the program even being open. And now, because this is a really short video, it's already done. So we can go ahead and click on this button right here. It's gonna take us directly to the project location, show it right in our file, right in our Editing 101 project folder, right where it is, perfect. And if we click on it, we can watch the video to double check that it's correct.
First of my 4 meetings today, super epic, super excited, and now
Excellent. And that is how you can start editing in Adobe Premiere Pro. Like I said, super simple, basic beginner level stuff, but this is a great tutorial for first-time Premiere Pro users to get started in the program, because like I said, it can be very, very overwhelming at first. But if you follow these steps and you keep it simple, you will do fine. And in the future, I'm going to be posting more videos about how to do certain effects, how to do different tools in Premiere Pro, how to maybe use AI captions. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with Premiere Pro, but this is a very great introduction to Adobe Premiere Pro. So if you enjoyed, please leave a like, comment, maybe even subscribe. Let me know if you want to see more Premiere Pro tutorials, because I really enjoyed making this and there's a lot of stuff that I really want to talk about. So let me know if you want to see more tutorials in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.